Straight. Let me start recording.
Hi, everybody. Okay,
Hi, Stacy.
so hi. This is our second Watch Your Mentors Interview Each Other session of today, the first time ever at Career Lab, where we are doing two of those because we just had a really extra special opportunity to interview Dan Abramoff this morning. So
subscribe to our YouTube channel for that one.
Yes, smash that subscribe button. Anyway. This afternoon one is going to be more what we generally do for Career Lab, where we're going to do a mock job fit interview where Andrew is going to do a job fit interview on me as an interviewee. Like I said before, I'm going to kind of try and rewind my experience and answer the questions as if I were fresh out of Collab. So you can, hopefully I can do some justice to how you might be presenting some of these experiences. And then April is going to interview Lewis on a technical mock interview using the assignment and kind of the technical mock interviews, more like probably what you're experiencing at Collab Lab. So this week, the things you need to do are your technical mock interview and your job fit mock interview. And just learn, just come to the sessions and learn, ask all the questions you might have as you go into your interview processes. Even once Career Lab is over, we're all still here for you. So as you go through the interview processes, as you fill out new applications and do new take-home assignments, please keep us in the loop if you have questions. We're all here to do what we can to help you succeed and to learn and grow together. So we're here for you. Okay. Any questions about Career Lab anything, interview anything before we start?
So
No?
be thinking about, like, we'll leave some time at the end to debrief. So be thinking about questions you want to ask us about the interview, or like even like, how did it feel to answer that? Or like anything that kind of comes up for you, or my situations like this, like how should I answer that same question? And we can kind of take those questions towards the end.
I love that. Yes, exactly that. Okay. I'm nervous because interviews are weird.
Yeah,
so yes,
you should be nervous.
Let's do the interview.
All right. Hi, Stacy. I'm Andrew. I am an engineering manager at Zapier. We are a kind of a, you can think of us as like a workflow automation company. We're like a way of connecting different SaaS apps together, like get those things talking to each other. So I have an opening on my team for front-end engineer, and I'm excited to talk to you and just learn more about you. So
awesome. I'm super excited. I've been really digging into Zapier. I started using it just recently for some personal projects, but digging into the company and the culture has been really exciting. And I'm super excited to talk to you about this opportunity.
Cool. Great. Yeah, I'd love to start off with you just telling me a little bit about how you got into web development.
Cool. How I got into web development. Yes. So I, at the core, am a person who's very driven by people. And so I started my career in healthcare because I love helping people. And I never really thought that software development was something that I could do. And so I started seeing a lot of my friends go to some of these boot camps, and it was really interesting to me. And I started wondering if that was something that I could do. And as I was sort of making this decision, you start sort of seeing software in a different light when you realize that you're somebody who could have influence on it. And as I was going through my day-to-day in my healthcare career as a certified nurse's aide, I sort of started realizing I could have so much more of an impact on humans, on humanity, on people, if I used the skills that I had in my interest in technology to help build apps that could help more people rather than the one-on-one people helping that I was doing in healthcare. And so went to boot camp, learned a lot about how to code. I got out of boot camp and really didn't have a lot of teamwork collaboration experiences that a lot of the jobs were asking for people to have. And so I found this opportunity at a place called the Collab Lab, where you work alongside teams of software developers to actually build apps, and learned a lot about collaboration and actually building an app to spec with a team of people. And now I'm out there looking for an engineering role where I can really grow into it and be supported by a team of people who also put a really big emphasis on collaboration. So that's where I'm at in my journey.
Cool. Yeah, that's interesting because it's yeah, boot camp doesn't necessarily prepare you for some of that team stuff, right? So
exactly.
Yeah, I guess what do you when you think about what your next opportunity is, like what would that be ideally?
Sure. Yeah.
What would that
So
look like?
I, again, am really driven by the idea that the role that I take, the tools that I work on, I really want to make sure that they have an impact on actual people, on helping people, because that's something that's really dear to my heart. And so I was very excited about the Zapier opportunity because I love the work that you all are doing over there to sort of democratize automation, right? It's like one of your goals to make automation easier for so many people. And that's what I want to do. I want to help tons of people automate things that robots should be doing so that they can focus on human things. So the nurses that I worked alongside aren't spending time doing data entry so that they're giving care to humans and doing things that require a human. So I was really excited about this opportunity because I feel like it very much aligns with my core values too.
Yeah, I mean, sounds like you've definitely done your homework about Zapier. That's cool. And that's kind of how we think about it is, free people up to do the work that can't be done by machines, right?
I love that. Yes.
Yeah. And when you think about what kind of team you'd like to be on, because you are relatively early in your career, like what would be sort of a good situation for you?
Yeah. So I think one thing that my last opportunity really taught me at Collab working on team is that collaboration is something that's really important to me. We put a really heavy emphasis on, being really open and transparent about the work we're doing and sharing work and collaborating on things. And through that experience, I grew significantly because I had people to grow alongside. And I loved that kind of really heavy emphasis on teamwork. So any team that I join, I would really hope would put an emphasis on, pairing and teamwork and collaboration. And I want to go into a place where people want to help me grow. All on the other side, on the flip side of that, I think that it wouldn't be as healthy of a space for me if I were seen sort of as an afterthought. Like I would like to know that they're prioritizing, or there's like some priority for my growth on the team too. Like hopefully the other engineers on the team would be very interested in collaborating and mentoring and, being open to answering questions that I might have that might be things that they think are silly, but for me as somebody new is a totally valid question. I hope there's like a good level of respect and mentorship there.
Yeah, and we put some thought into that. So maybe when we get, I'll leave some time for you to ask me questions. Maybe we can come back to that. And I can
Yes,
tell you
I would love
more
to.
about it. Okay, cool. So you kind of talked about what would make, like, what would be sort of a non-ideal situation. Is there anything about, like, are there any other things about a team that would be difficult for you, like certain types of personalities or certain types of work wouldn't be that interesting or anything like that?
At this point, I'm interested in any work possible. Like I don't know what I love yet because I haven't experienced enough. And so every time I get tasked with something, I'm really eager to dive in and learn something new. So I wouldn't be at all concerned with what work there is to be done as long as it were attributing to a greater mission of helping people, right? As far as different personality types to work with, I, again, don't really have any concerns as long as everybody on the team really comes at their work and their team and their community with a growth mindset in the fact that, like we can all learn and grow from each other and we all have something different to offer. So as long as everybody is open to the idea of, growing together and we have a lot of empathy for each other, I think that would be the healthiest space that I could enter into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard of that concept and I think I understand what you mean by it, but could you maybe define what growth mindset means to you?
Yeah, so when coming onto this team, I really want to be sure that everybody there knows that they can do better. They know I can do better. They know that they can do better and that we're all going to hold each other accountable and hold each other to really high standards while still kind of giving trust in each other that we're bringing different things to the table and we have different ideas and those are all really valuable. So at a high level, knowing that we're all in this together and we can all grow together and holding each other accountable for that kind of thing.
Okay. All right. That's cool. Just a little time check. So maybe tell me about some work you've done that you're especially proud of.
Yeah. So again, going back to my experience at the Collab Lab, I'm really proud of the work that my team did to make our app accessible. So going through boot camp, I learned a lot about, going through boot camp, I learned about accessibility in the sense of how accessibility is applied to web pages, right? Color contrast, images having alt text, and some of the basics. But whenever I actually got into building an app with this team, I realized how deep accessibility actually needs to go to be helpful to people. And again, because I'm here to help people, it's something that I became super passionate about and interested in. And, it's so much more than just color contrast or alt text, right? It's making sure your drop downs are accessible. It's making sure your entire app can be tabbed through, making sure, voiceover is working properly. All of those things are really important. And I have only scratched the surface of it, but I'm eager to be in a space where when I'm working on different features, I might be able to dig into those things a little bit deeper because, again, like at my core, I really think that this is a concept that I would love to take with me through my career and on my mission to sort of make the world a better place with technology. So I'm very proud of the work that my team did to dig into accessibility and make sure that our tool was able to be used by people with disabilities or even situational disabilities.
Yeah, that's great. Because that's one of the things that's kind of an emphasis for me with my teams at Zapier is just doing what we can to make things more accessible. So cool, good to hear that. So maybe tell me about a time when you had a conflict on your team. What was the conflict? How did you go about trying to solve it, make the situation better?
Yeah, I've got a few recent situations I could pull from, but one that I think is really important is, okay, so at the Collab Lab, each week you're paired with one of your teammates to take a ticket, part of this feature, and get it all the way across the line. So pair through it, work on it individually, but at the end of the week, you and your partner have created this thing that you're going to push into production. And me and my partner knew that we weren't going to have a whole lot of time to work together synchronously. So in the beginning of the week, we got together and we did a really good job of planning and delegating so that we could, work asynchronously through the week to get it done. And the week was going on and we kept pushing to this branch. And the more that we pushed to this feature branch, we started realizing we weren't on the same page and we weren't working towards the same goal. And it started getting really frustrating and you could just feel we were both very frustrated. And I was very hesitant to ask them if we could get on a Zoom call together because as an earlier career person, it felt very intrusive of me to be like, let's get on Zoom. But we did it and it actually ended up being exactly what we needed in that situation. So we got on and we were able to really work it out and realign what we were doing and essentially get the ticket across the finish line. But it really taught me a lot about working remote, like synchronous communication and Slack messages, or async communication and Slack messages can be really great, especially for documentation. But at the end of the day, we're humans and sometimes humans need that face time. And it saved us so much time to just stop what we were doing and get on and realign. And I think that's really important. I would hope that's something that I would see on this team too, is a lot of willingness to put down our pens and realign when we feel like we're getting a little off course.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things we do is every day we start off with just a 15-minute kind of, it's a little bit of a status meeting, but just kind of a way we're all like, we see each other, we talk to each other, we get a little bit of alignment. Even though we're a fully remote company, we try to get on at least one call a day with everybody. So you kind of feel that connection. I think it goes a long way.
Cool. Yeah, I love that situation.
If you found yourself, like if you could rewind with that particular situation, at what point would you have done something differently, and like what would it have been?
I love that the idea that you said on your team, you meet more regularly, you meet every day. And that's something that I kind of wish we had done a bit more of, is more regular synchronous meetings, more face-to-face time. Because again, I think you can cut through so much of the ambiguity when you're just face-to-face and you can have a conversation. So I think if I were to go back and do the whole experience again, I would see if my team were comfortable and if we could coordinate more regular meetings just to make sure that, we're moving forward together rather than spending too much time diverging and then having to clean up a mess in the end. So more regular meetings.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then maybe just one more question from me, which is, what's one of the biggest challenges you've faced in your career? So tech or before tech, any of the roles that you've held in the past, and tell me something you learned from that.
One of the biggest challenges I faced in my career. Do you want a specific situation, or do you just want a high-level theme that I found through my transition from healthcare to tech?
That might be interesting. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, that's one that really stands out to me. Again, I put a lot of thought into the human connections that I make, and one thing that I've learned, one thing that has really shown in this transition is that people are very different. Working in the healthcare setting where my direct teammates were generally much older than I was, 40s, 50s, 60s, largely female-driven teams in nursing settings, then moving kind of more onto the tech side of things where it's a lot younger group of people and very like male dominated, has been a really interesting transition because I'm realizing so much more that you need to be intentional about the way you communicate with people and meet them where they are. And when you're communicating with people, there's three things that I really like to lean on is one, having empathy for each other. Like we're all very different. And I think that that's something that is really challenging, but it's also what makes humanity so great. And then two, when you're communicating, whether it's with your nursing team or with your developer team, make sure that you're aligning on value. Make sure you understand what the value of the thing you're trying to do is. Why are you trying to help this patient? Why are you building this software? Are we working towards the same goals and do we have the same values? And then three, just setting really great expectations. So, being clear so that we can measure our success and being clear so that we can make sure we're succeeding is something that people need because people want to succeed, but they need to know how. And so I think that one of the biggest challenges I've faced in my career is learning just that, learning how to communicate with a bunch of different types of people using a same kind of outline that, resonates with my own personal values has been challenging and rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I love that you have kind of a framework for that. That's cool. Well, we don't have a ton of time left, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to ask me any questions. If there's anything you want to know about Zapier or the team, the kind of work we do, anything.
Yeah.
We mentioned a couple things earlier.
For sure. I've got a couple questions. I loved kind of what we were talking about earlier. What does support and onboarding look like on your team? If I were to come on your team as an earlier career engineer, what is the onboarding like and what is the support like from other teammates?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So Zapier has a really robust onboarding program in general. So we've been a remote company from the start. So we've put a lot of effort, a lot of investment into just making sure that people can kind of ramp up into the company effectively in general. So the first week is all about just the company. You don't even really talk to your team. It's like you're in with a little cohort of people. Right. They have people like maybe 5, 6, 7 people all start at the same time. And you go through a bunch of sessions, including meeting the founders and learning about the company values, learning about, how to get a reimbursement for something, like just all the stuff about the company,
right?
How it's structured, what we're trying to do. Then the second week, as an engineer, you would go into more engineering focused onboarding. So again, still not super team oriented, although you may start attending some team meetings, but learning just the systems, a high level overview of how everything fits together. And, in this role, you'd be a front end engineer. So you'd start to go more in depth into front end engineering and how that works at Zapier, the tech stack that we use and blah, blah, blah. And you start to tune into the team stuff. And then eventually you start attending team meetings and kind of, being a little bit more kind of closely working with the team. At that point, we will make sure we have some things on the backlog that are, kind of scoped, relatively small, relatively simple things, just so you can get used to how we work together. How do we, you have some practice from the Collab lab, it sounds like, but like how we write PRs, how we get stuff merged into production, so the mechanics of it, but then also how the team works together. So, we'll probably do some kind of social thing that first week. We get the whole team together, maybe a team lunch or something. So you get to meet people and kind of start to make some connections. And then in the past, what we've done, we haven't had like a single mentor assigned to the new person. Like you'll have somebody through Zapier for Zapier questions, but on the team, what we would do is the first few issues have you sort of pair with one of the more senior engineers to work through things, and just kind of have somebody you can kind of pair up with in the morning. Like kind of maybe get a little direction on how you should approach the thing. What's the in and out of scope, like kind of clarifying all that stuff. So
love that.
And then eventually you kind of get the hang of it and just kind of be part of the team. But we recognize it takes a while to ramp up into a place that's as complex as Zapier. So totally don't expect you to be like super productive first day. Like you come in and have plenty of kind of time and kind of a ramp up period there.
I love that. That's great. So what do you think is one of the top skills or qualities a person would have to be really successful in this role?
Yeah, I mean, we are fully remote, so a lot of it is around communication. If we're not talking to each other all the time, we don't, we're not in the same room, and you can't like kind of glance over and see what the person's doing. So we need to be kind of oversharing all the time, and we use Slack for written communication, for like kind of in real time communication. So it feels a little awkward for a lot of people to start with, but you need to be just kind of sharing, like, here's what I'm doing, here's what's going well, here's what's not going well, I'm blocked on this, can I get some help, I have a PR ready, can someone review it, like all that kind of stuff. Just a lot of typing in Slack. And then anyway, yeah, just communication I think is one of the hard things, just because it's because we're a remote org.
Yeah, it's hard. You're remote and everybody does it a little bit differently. And so learning like the different communication styles amongst your teammates got to be some really interesting challenge to work through. I love that.
Yeah. Anything else you want to know about it?
I do have lots of other questions, but I know that we're on a time and I want to respect your time.
Okay,
so
that's true.
If you don't mind, I would love to email you a couple more questions.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah.
All right, well then I'll just follow up with you with email so that we can talk through the rest of it.
Okay, thanks. I look forward to next steps, or whatever they say at the end of these things.
Okay, another thing that I was gonna ask, oh gosh, and it just skipped my mind. Oh my goodness. Okay, never mind. I had a few questions.
Was it about something we had talked about at the beginning, or like
it was anyway
accessibility or something maybe?
Anyway, come prepared with some questions, friends.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Scene. All right.
And
is that what they say?
Great. Okay. So do you just want to like debrief at the total end and let April and Louis go now, or do you want to do a quick job fit mock interview debrief?
Are there any pressing questions, or people will be happy to wait till the end?
Good. Okay. Cool. Then we will
hand it over.
Yep. Over to you, April.
Whoa. All right. Now we get the juicy bit started. Like, okay. Hi, Louis. I am a senior software developer at, I'm just going to call it X Corp because it's like not a real, yeah. So I've been the team lead for, well, I'm working at this company for 10 years. So I've been here. It's an established old company, and we're excited to meet you. And you want to start by just introducing yourself and what kind of experience you have, and yeah.
Yeah, sure. My name is Louis. I'm currently looking for a software engineering position. I've been doing programming in JavaScript for like 3 or 4 years now. So, and I'm from Sacramento. So.
That's awesome. I am also in Sacramento.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So many of us in Sacramento.
I know. I feel like that was completely accidental, but or was it? We've all been drinking the water. So okay. I'm wondering if you mind sharing your screen and we can go over the take-home assignment.
Yeah, sure. I can share my screen. Can you enable screen sharing? Okay. So do you want me to go over how it works first and then show the code?
Yes, I would love that. Thank you.
Okay. So I think the prompt was just to have this text box here, and then when you type in the text box, it converts the text below with these options here. So if I type anything here like Dr. Louis is in the hospital, it's currently set to lowercase. So when I enter text, it automatically updates the text below to all lowercase. And then if I change it to uppercase, it'll change it all to uppercase as well.
Okay, cool. You want to go through the code?
Yeah, sure. So in the README, I saw that there were 3 criteria for how it would be evaluated with correctness, code quality, and code style. So I can just go backwards with code style. I decided to add a couple of packages. I added YesLint and Prettier, which are pretty standard for formatting code, so it looks nice and hopefully made it easier for you to read. And then for code quality, well, I can actually just show the project here. So this is the app.js file on the right-hand side. The way that it works is I have a use state for the text input. So this is just the default value here.
Mhm.
And it's currently set to some example text. And then there's a state for an option. So the options that you see in the inputs, I put into a separate file called format options. And this has the different types of formatting options that we can have. So lowercase and uppercase, and they're mapped to different methods. So these are pretty simple ones. So the lowercase one just uses the 2 lowercase method. And the uppercase one does the 2 uppercase. So all this does is there's a text area here in the bottom, here at the top, sorry, that when you type into it, it updates the text input state. And then once that's changed, it actually will re-render the component, and it sends that value to the method based on the index of the format option that's selected. So by default, the initial format option is 0, which is the first input option. So that's why when I loaded the page in the beginning, it was all lowercase.
Mhm.
So clicking on that input option, so if you click on the different input options, like this first one or the second one, it'll change that input value and it re-renders the component, and then it re-renders the value that gets output at the bottom there.
And also, it looked like you had done some tests as well. Do you want to talk about those and the choices that you made for which tests to write?
Yeah, sure. I can start with the format options one. So usually when I'm making like a utility function like that, I usually like to make tests based on each of the functions. That way I can like write it out without having to run the application. So I only wrote 2 here, the one for all lowercase, one for all uppercase, and it just makes sure that running those methods with certain text will output the correct values in the bottom here. And for the app test, this one's a little bit more complex. It adds screen and rendering, so that way I can emulate clicking on buttons and making sure that the values change. So for example, if I look at the second test, it should lowercase as default. Oh, sorry, that's that one. The third test, it should change the format of the output fields. If I click a radio option, you can see here that I rendered the application, and then I clicked the uppercase input, and then you can see that it changed the value to uppercase here with that expect.
Okay, that's great. And back to app.js, I had one question about format option because you're using 0 for like the initial format option. How would you do it, say if you were working in a team of developers and you wanted like, how would you go about it so that someone could just look at that and initially know what it's going to do that's different than say 0 or 1?
Yeah, I could show you that. I could do it I can do it in just JavaScript. What I would probably do is probably create an array of options.
Okay, yeah.
So let me just check this here.
Mhm.
So I would create an array of options. So I would actually take the format options, I would map it. And then I would just output the option dot name. So this options becomes an array of the different names here. So this would just be like lowercase and uppercase, I believe.
Mhm.
And then what I can do here is I can set this to an option. So I can put option 0, which means it'll be lowercase. And then option 1, it would be a string that says lowercase or uppercase.
So even in addition to that, option 0 to me, if I was coming in on
I see.
this, yeah,
Yeah.
like how, because I feel like I
Um,
would have to kind of understand the code or ask you
Sure.
about it. Yeah.
What I can do instead is I can make this a TypeScript file. It would be easier that way. So I can show how this would look. So I can make a numerator called like option, which would have different, so it could be lowercase, and uppercase. Oops. And then what I can do here is I can actually put option dot lowercase, and it would look like that.
Nice.
But I would have to adjust the way that it gets set on the bottom here.
Yeah.
If I click, so let's see. I'm doing it here, set format option here.
Mhm.
So what I could do is next. I would have to set this to. Actually, I think this still works because and all enumerator does is sets it to a value, which would be 0 and 1. So actually, I don't have to change anything. So this would
Okay.
be set fine. Yeah.
That's awesome. And do you understand why I asked that question? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense because it can be hard to understand numbers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, how about what if there's strange input? Do you feel like you needed to do any error handling, or if you were to supply error handling, how would you go about it, or what kinds of things could you capture?
If I found like an error that was like outside of the tests,
Or
I'm trying to
even on
think
the
of.
user side, like on the user input, like all
Mhm.
sorts of things that a user could do that say something that isn't going to get capitalized or lowercase. Maybe it's numeric, or maybe nothing was changed.
I'm trying to think of an example that would work.
Mhm.
Let me see. I'd probably add some type of UI to display if there was an error, and I'd have to make some sort of check. For like if I don't think there's any way for a string not to be lowercase, but if for some reason if this method here was sending a number instead, which doesn't have a lowercase or uppercase method, it would probably break the application.
Mhm.
So I would probably add checks to this to make sure that it was a string before returning something with a method here.
Mhm.
And then if it threw an error, I could pick that up and display an error response.
Okay, cool. Oh, one thing is, do you know how to say a user doesn't want to use their mouse to click all the things? What is something you could add to the HTML to enable a user to tab through their inputs?
Oh yeah, I added labels for all the inputs,
Mhm.
as well as yeah, every input I think has a label, so that way it's accessible and it's readable by a screen reader. And then they're all tabbable, so you can tab through the page and see
Mhm.
each of the items get focused. I just have to restart the application,
Oh, yeah,
and then I can show you.
sure. Also, no worries if, while I was going through this stuff, if it if it
No worries.
changed stuff.
So as you can see here, if I can tab through this.
Mhm.
I can't tab to the text box here because it's disabled, but
Right.
I can go through these inputs here.
Okay. So what if you wanted to, okay, this totally breaks the UI and I get it, but it's hypothetical. What if you wanted the tab to go from the text box to uppercase and then to lowercase? What is something you could put in the HTML to change that?
I believe I can put tab index on
Mhm.
here.
Yep.
But it would have to be opposite. So I'm trying to think of, I can do format options minus index from option cell length. This would make it so it goes backwards, I think. I just have
Okay.
to double check. Oh, actually it doesn't tab at all. Okay.
I mean, you could also just use a whole number. It's fine. I just wanted to kind
Yeah.
of just get a sense of the HTML there that you would use. and that's okay.
It might be 3 or 4. I can't remember how it would work exactly. But I think because this text box is tab index 0, I think it would have to be either 1 or 2, but you would have to use that property to make it work.
Okay, let's see. I just wanted to do a quick time check. You can stop sharing and we'll just run over a couple of questions unrelated to the code. So thanks for sharing.
Okay.
Though I did see that you used TypeScript. So, first question is like, what are the trade-offs and like what drew you to using TypeScript in this case?
I like using TypeScript a lot. I just recently started using it like in the past year or so because it makes code easier to read. Like with that one example that you had asked earlier, instead of using a number, I could use an enumerator. But it's also, it can slow down development in the short term, but I think long term it adds benefits that could improve the development times of projects with its readability and how effective it can be to also prevent bugs like type errors and things like that.
Have you worked in React and seen any other ways to do not using TypeScript, but there's like another method to use that?
Yeah, there's prop types and which you can use as well. And I think I still use those for class components because it's a little bit difficult to add TypeScript to that.
Okay. One moment. I mean, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a pretty easy question for you. What's the difference between 2 equal signs and 3 equal signs in JavaScript?
So 2 equal signs is testing if something is like truthy or it's truthy or falsy. Like for example, you can, if you write like 1 as a string, double equals I'll start with the other one. So with the 3 equal signs, it's a strict equal. So you have to have the same type and you have to have the same value. So like false equals undefined is actually false. But if you do that with 2 equal signs, it's actually true because false and undefined are both falsy values.
Cool, thank you. And then, so you talked about using prop types. So we can probably just segue into what are props in React and, how are they useful? How do you use them?
Yeah. So props are one way that you can pass data from one component to the other through sort of like attributes on HTML. You can just add them to any component and it will be brought up in the child component and they can use that data to render something different or you can pass down methods or functions that you can call to the parent component.
What kind of CSS have you used in your React apps? Like, have you used Sass? Have you used any sort of like internal libraries or?
Yeah, so I've used Sass or CSS, and then I've also been using styled components for some projects, which is pretty similar to Sass, but it also builds the components themselves, which is nice. So you can just use them without having to reference a style sheet.
Have you used props in your styled components?
Yeah, you can do the same. You can use them as similarly to regular components. You can just pass them in like their regular component. They can go down into the props, and you can change the CSS values that way too.
Like, what's a good example of when you would use that?
One example that I use is for like active states. So like I can pass like an is active prop to a styled component, and then it can change the CSS to look different, or disabled one. It can make it look faded or remove the pointer events so that you can't click on it.
Cool, awesome. Okay, I just want to check in with everybody else. I feel like we kind of rapid fire through a lot of stuff, and now we have 15 minutes. So should we open this up for questions now?
Yeah.
Thanks,
Or do you want
Lewis.
to take it?
Thank you.
You did
Nice
great,
job.
by the
Close.
way. Like,
We're all in the chat saying how zen you are and everything.
Totally chill.
Cool. How was that for everybody? What did you, were you imagining yourself in the hot seat and how that would have been? No.
I love how you like pretty much like demoed like the same way that our collabbies demo every weekend, like just demoed your work, walked through it really well, showed it in production, and then showed what the code did. Jennifer, what do you think?
I just wanted to go back to your presentation for a second, Stacy. I love the fact that everything that you brought up was really positive. Even when Andrew was asking a question about, I guess, problems or issues or things that would be kind of like red flags on a team for you, you somehow were able to kind of redirect it in a really positive way. And I've read about how people can do that. I've never done that, but I was so impressed with how you were able to do it. That just was like, that was pretty illuminating for me. It really was. I mean, it really was. And Louis, I can't believe you're just kind of sitting there and talking through it and giving these examples. And I don't know TypeScript, or, you know, it's on my to-do list, but I just love the fact that you were super calm about everything. And I didn't hear a lot of ums. You just had little pauses here and there where I could tell you were kind of framing the way that you were going to word things. And I would like to be able to do that. So I'm so glad we did this.
Yeah, Louis, I liked when you did get tripped up a little bit and you were like, wait a minute, let me start over. And then you like, it was kind of like I'm going to jump out of that. I know this was, and so I was like, oh, that's good. Like, you don't have to keep talking yourself into a mess. Just be like, pause. We're going to go back.
I get pretty self-conscious when I say like I always hear myself saying it. So like I just like tell myself to not say it.
What else? What other reactions do people have?
I can just say that it's as hard being, well, it's hard being an interviewer as well as being an interviewee, because you want to like ask things that are, you know, relevant. I don't want to just, you know, I have this huge list of questions, but I don't want to just like fly over there. It's really nice to be able to work through the code and ask questions specifically to that and get good responses. And I didn't even expect you to like recode a thing. Like that was a huge bonus. Just, you know, I feel like I probably would have just been okay if you had just explained it like, oh, I could have done this or I could have done this, but that you were able to just go through it on the fly is pretty badass.
Yeah, it's hard, like, because as the interviewer, you really do have to be an active listener and think one step ahead, like, what are you going to ask because of that? Andrew always does a great job of that.
Yeah, I feel like it's harder with the technical interviews though, because you actually have to understand their code like in real time and stuff. But yeah, nice job, April.
Like my tips for, and I should have done this better for this example, is get like 5 stories together of where you struggled or did a really good job or something you're proud of. Get like 5 solid stories, because I feel like that's a good number for if they ask you any question, you can kind of be like, well, back to that one story in this situation. And if you can really refine the way you talk about those things, and again, put them in a positive light and see the light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. If they ask you something a little that might catch you off guard, you've got like a deck of cards you can kind of pull from.
Yeah, I think that's I like that a lot, because it's a lot of times they're just trying to see, like interviews are just trying to see like how you react to a certain kind of type of thing. And so even if the situation doesn't fit exactly, it still might satisfy the question. And if it's something that, you know, highlights some skill of yours, somewhere where you really did a good job on something, that's just use that story. And if it's not quite what they want, they'll ask you to tell us a different one. But at least you got your good story in there, you know, so they heard the good story.
Exactly.
I have a good thing too. So I take notes when I interview, and I have to take notes because this is when I'm being interviewed. Because I will forget. I go off on tangents. When I tell a story, I mean, it's like suddenly we're in Antarctica and I need to like pull that back. Like it just, and I found that if I can just quickly write down like the question that the person asked or like the theme, and I'll tell people like, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to take notes just for myself during this interview. That helps me a lot, because then you can just like look back and I don't have to be like, oh, did I even hit on your question? You know,
I love that you say that, because that's something that I do as well. Like these notes, like literally aren't even words. They're just like scribbles. But I have this
All
note out
right.
here. Andrew, you've probably seen me on lots of meetings, pull it open because I'm not even taking notes most of the time. I just need a pause. I just need a minute to like kind of get my thoughts together. And it's something I picked up at working in client services. If you don't know what to say, I'd be like, just a second, I'm going to take a note. And you can just kind of scribble on your pad while you think, shit, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Okay, anyway, back to that question you were asking. And it gives you a chance to kind of collect yourself and remove yourself from kind of an uncomfortable situation for a second. And then prepare and get back into it.
Now I know your trick, Stacey.
Yeah. So if you ever see me actually writing a note, know that I'm not actually writing a note. I'm just like, all right, be thoughtful about your response here. Don't just spout off.
So question for behavioral interview, how important is it for answers to be related to coding experience? If candidates use bootcamp experience from previous non-software engineering jobs, is that negatively viewed? That's a great question, Jen. And I mean, Stacey, you were drawing on your nursing experience and things. I think it's, as long as it's relevant, I think it's great. And maybe not all interviewers think that, but it's, especially when interviewing somebody who's earlier in their career, like, I mean, I understand, like, maybe you haven't been in tech for very long or at all, maybe. So you're not going to have direct experience in the exact setting that we're talking about. So, I don't know if I'm unusual, but I'm like trying to find those connections between what you did and what I need and see if those things line up, So I think it's fine. It's the interview, it's the experience you have. So that's what you should be talking about.
Yeah, like if I were to go about it from your perspective right now, I would try and make most of my stories kind of centered around the work that you did at Collab because it is very much working in a software development environment. But also be able to kind of, like in all of your previous jobs, there were processes, there were like human conflicts, and those things are really valuable because like you could say like Lisa Schisler Smith says, she's like, I have a very diverse background of job experience. And I think that that's a feature, not a bug, because it's, prepared me with all these other experiences that I can bring and make your team more diverse and dynamic. So don't shy away from answering with your previous experiences. But if you have something relevant to say that you picked up at Collab Lab, I would probably lean on that first, unless you have something really juicy from a previous one.
Yeah, I feel like leadership, conflict, teams, all those things are, they're cross communication. There's those themes that you do in every day, that pretty much, I think that maybe I'm kind of with Andrew. I feel like also, you have a varied experience and you can't just say that your career just starts right here. This career is part of the other career and now it's just morphing, that's how I see it.
Other questions? Comments? Just random comments. Aspirations, fears. Next steps. Jen.
Okay, so I don't know about the other collab lobbies here, but I am at a point where I'm putting out the resumes and I'm getting places that there's a test before I even talk to anyone. I get an autoresponder with a test, like a take-home test. They want to see what I can do before I can even talk to someone. How do you guys feel about that? I mean, because a person only has so much time, especially when they have kids and they have, other commitments. So what is your feeling on this, where they want to know that you can code before anyone bothers talking? I mean, I don't even know if they looked at my resume.
Yeah, it's not how I would do it, but I don't know how in-depth these things are. If it's like, take this 5-question coding quiz, maybe that's fine. But if it's, like spend hours on building an app for us when when you haven't talked to a human, I don't know. I mean, I don't take it as a good sign.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like it feels yucky, but I also have been in those shoes, Jennifer, where you're like, I have to get a job. So I have to do anything I can to try. And so I know that at this point in the game, it's really hard to be choosy and be like, that environment doesn't sound great, because when it comes down to it, it really can just be a title game. Like you just got to get that first title and it makes getting the next one easier. So it's a hard decision that I think you just have to weigh your own personal schedule and see how much time you're willing to commit to that. Because, you know, like Andrew said, if it's a quick, easy thing, maybe it's the risk worth taking to spend that extra time. But if it's like a really intense, long one, you know, if you don't have the time to do that and it doesn't seem like it's going to be a great environment to work in, do you have the ability to wait a little bit longer and find a different opportunity to apply for? Or do you need to take every chance you can get?
I talked about this with my husband, and I thought we agreed on a good strategy, which is like maybe pick a couple of really high quality places to apply to that you're like really wanting to be at, and then a couple in the middle, because you still need places to kind of practice and just keep your momentum going. And maybe some ones that are like, you know, quick apply per week, you know, whatever number you're able to achieve. That way you feel like you can still commit to like a really high quality application every week, because I think that is really fulfilling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I like the advice of just kind of approaching your job search as a job, you know, so having a schedule, you know, like 9 to 10, I look for job listings, you know, from 10 to noon, I submit some things. Maybe I spend a couple hours in the afternoon working on, you know, the coding challenges or whatever, like just kind of have some structure to it and just have a routine to it. Because it's, you know, I mean, some people get lucky and it happens really fast. And some people, it's a slog. Yeah, it takes a long time. And if you're going to get there if you're putting in consistent effort, you know. But if you go really hard for a week and then you kind of give up for 3 weeks, like it's a lot less likely to happen. It's a bit of a numbers game. You just have to find the right fit. You know, there are plenty of jobs out there, and there are more and more places that are actually, I think, are open to early career people. Seeing that more and more, so it's encouraging. So the opportunities, you just have to kind of like find the right one, you know. Kind of hang in there a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's always good too to be focusing on those job boards that do host jobs that are more inclusive. So like diversified tech, for example. Like if you see a job on there that Vinny has personally vetted and they're asking for a test right up front, it's probably a bet worth taking, because you know that like it's going to be a good company. But if it's some random startup from the Bay where they're like, spend 5 hours doing this and you're like, I've never even heard of you, and your site looks a little janky, it's like, might not.
Yeah, I think that's not bad advice. It's you want to find places that are inclusive. There's a piece of advice I haven't had a chance yet to give during Career Lab this time, which is that a lot of companies don't post their junior roles. So like at Zapier, we don't ever post an early career role, because if we do, we're going to get thousands of applications for one spot, right? So it doesn't mean we don't hire people at that level. But when we do, we're sourcing. We're doing what's called outbound, you know, like outreach and stuff. So our recruiters are going around LinkedIn mostly and looking for people that fit the criteria. So you never know. Like if there's a role that doesn't really specify level, you can apply to it, say like, hey, I'm kind of early in my career. Or you don't even have to say that. Just like say, hey, I'm qualified for this, you know, and they will quickly see like, oh, they're early in their career. They might fit on this team that has one of those openings, but they won't be on this team that needs somebody who's more further along in their career. So don't be afraid to just apply to, like, especially if it's a company you know has a good culture, like that is inclusive, but maybe they don't have any openings right at the moment that fit your, you know, that describe you exactly. It's still worth applying. Mandy.
Yeah, you know, there's this saying that like people don't leave companies, they leave teams, or they leave managers, right? And so, I mean, how can you kind of dive into that information ahead of time as an applicant? Like you're giving us, you know, information about Zapier that we wouldn't have probably known otherwise. So I find it's like, it's not very clear, because I'm really, that's a high priority for me, is to join a team that I think I'm comfortable on. I mean, I want to be interested in the product as well, but I feel like my own health and well-being is improved when I'm on a good team. So
100%.
it's hard to find that out from the outside.
I hear there's this thing called a whisper network. Anybody know that? The whisper networks? I don't know. I'm a white guy. What do I know? Like I'm the subject of the whisper networks. So
Yeah, I always tell everybody too, like if anybody that I talk to is trying to get a job in tech at large, I'm like, go on Twitter. Twitter can be a very toxic place, but if you really refined your community to be positive people who are there to help you, like I found a really good community on Twitter, and it's honestly where I've gotten every single tech job I've ever had. So I think going over there, you can get a real sense of what companies are good. And like, if you're curious about one, post it. And usually there's somebody out there that'll be like, yes or no. And if you can follow some of the people who work for those companies, if you see them tweeting from their personal account about their work, you can kind of get like an eye into what their team cultures are like. Like, you're probably going to complain a little bit on Twitter if you hate your job, like you just are. And you're probably not going to be super explicit about like, company X sucks, but you're going to be like, oh, another day of the grind. Like, what kind of energy are those people bringing? Or if it's somebody who's actively tweeting about their company, like in a really positive light on their personal account, there's an okay chance that that's authentic and that they do actually enjoy working there.
Or they get really good referral bonuses.
I have
It's also good.
I have been working with a career coach. I mean, it's a little different because I'm, mid-career or something. But one of the suggestions he had that's been kind of helping me just build the network out is, go to a company, go to like the LinkedIn page of a company where you want to work, then look at the people and look at how you're related, and then try to build in those people, and maybe just reach out and be like, hey, I am really interested in your company. Can we talk for 20 minutes about how, my skill set could fit in with your company? And it could be someone that's not even a hiring manager, not even a recruiter. It's worked surprisingly well for me, but I don't know if that's just, I also talk about how I race trucks on my LinkedIn, and that gives people something to talk about when they talk to me. So they're like, whoa, okay. But but I also get a lot of people who don't say anything. So I don't know how that works for someone who's like looking to get in, but you can just be like, I'm really want to get into this industry. I'm following your company for years, and not even mention open roles, but just try to foster that, especially if they're first or second level connections and you have, a lot of people in common, maybe that works. I mean, your mileage may vary, of course.
I like putting it like that. Your mileage may vary.
It all comes back to trucks for me.
Right.
Yeah, I love just like little helpful bits of advice. And one that I recently shared on Twitter that lots of you probably saw was one of my friends told me, make them tell you no. And I've very much been living by that recently. It's like, if you want to apply for something, apply for it. And if they don't think you're a good fit, make them tell you that. Like, you don't be the one to disqualify yourself. Let them do it. Make them tell you no. Because if you're telling yourself no, how will you ever know? You'll never know.
Like Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly that. Yeah.
I think that's apocryphal. I don't think we actually said that. Anyway. I probably need to go, but this was fun. Hopefully it was helpful to y'all and to everyone who hopefully watches the recording afterwards. But
Yeah.
Stacy, you're hired, just for the record.
Thanks. Excellent.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. If you have questions, do your mock interviews. They're very important just to get the words out there and figure out where you need to refine.
Yeah.
And if you have questions, let us know. If you want to do more, let us know. We're totally here for you. If you have tips that you pick up along the way, if you have interviews out in the wild that you want to tell your friends at Collab about, that would be very helpful too. So we can kind of keep our finger on the pulse of what it even looks like. So, okay, I will upload this for people to watch and let us know how we can help. Okay.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, friends. See
You
you later.
guys have a good night.
You too. Bye.